Let me ask you something. When was the last time you woke up and felt pulled by a purpose? So strong, so clear, that it felt like you had to move, not because someone told you to, but because something deep inside was saying, this is it. Most people don't live like that. Most people wake up driven by their alarm clocks instead of their dreams. They don't start with why, they start with what. What do I need to do today? What's due? What's expected of me? And that's the trap. That's how average begins. It doesn't show up loud, it creeps in quietly on autopilot. Now let's pause for a second. This isn't about judgment. This isn't a criticism of anyone working hard, showing up, or doing their best with what they have. In fact, that's honorable. But there's a difference between working hard and building a life. One is survival, the other is creation. And the bridge between the two is vision. We were never meant to just work, pay bills, and die. Deep down, you know that. But somewhere along the way, we're taught that fortune is reserved for the lucky, the connected, the chosen. That's not true. Fortune isn't an accident. It's the outcome of vision that's lived out with intention. Most people spend their energy chasing goals. But goals are just finish lines. Temporary, short-lived. You hit one, you feel good for a while. And then, I've met people who had nothing, no connections, no money, no backup plan, but they had a vision, and that made them unstoppable. I've also met people who had everything, comfort, prestige, resources, and still felt empty because what they lacked wasn't money, it was meaning. See, average starts when we follow the world's definition of success instead of crafting our own. We're told to be realistic, to pick something safe, to fit in. But if you ever noticed that the people who create extraordinary lives rarely fit in, they don't blend, they stand out. Because they follow a vision no one else can see, and they believe in it before the world believes in them. So the first step to go from average to fortune isn't to hustle harder. It's to slow down long enough to ask a better question. Why am I really here? What problem do I care enough to solve that I do it even if no one clapped for me? What future do I see that's worth building even if I fail a few times on the way? That's where vision begins. Not with answers, but with honest questions. Fortune isn't born from certainty. It's born from courage. And let's be clear, vision doesn't have to be grand to be powerful. It doesn't have to be change the world in capital letters. It might just be change one life, break a generational pattern, or create something beautiful. The scale isn't the point. The alignment is. When your life aligns with a purpose, that's when momentum shows up. When you have vision, discipline becomes easier. You're no longer forcing yourself to work, you're choosing to work. Because now your actions have a direction. They mean something. You're not just clocking in hours. You're investing in a future only you can see. That's what separates the average from the fortunate. Not talent, not luck, but the ability to say, I see something that isn't here yet. And I believe in it enough to act as if it already exists. Think of every great leader, every entrepreneur, every artist who ever made an impact. They didn't wait for the world to validate their dream. They believed first, and that belief shaped their reality. If you're serious about rising above average, you need to fall in love with your future before it's even visible. You need to stop waiting for permission. Because the truth is, no one's coming to give it to you. Your vision is yours. No one else can carry it. No one else can see it like you can. And that's your power. Now here's the hard part. Vision doesn't always feel good. It requires patience. It demands sacrifice. It often looks like going the opposite direction of the crowd. You might feel alone. You might feel misunderstood. That's okay. You're not meant to be understood by everyone. You're meant to be remembered by those who needed what only you could build. You don't build fortune by copying someone else's path. You build it by finding your own, by listening to that whisper inside that says there's more and daring to follow it even when it doesn't make sense yet. So I'll ask again, What are you building? Not just in your career, not just in your bank account, but in your life. Because if the answer isn't clear, then start there. Start with a quiet moment. Ask yourself the uncomfortable questions. Get honest about what matters. Then move. Not fast, but forward. You don't need a perfect plan. You just need a clear why. Because once you have that, the how starts to reveal itself. And fortune, it stops being this distant concept and starts becoming your next chapter. This is where it begins. Not with effort, not with hustle, but with vision. That's the first step. Not the easiest, but the most essential, because if you can see it, really see it, you can build it value. Fortune doesn't follow the loudest. It follows the clearest. Feel. We live in a world that rewards imitation. From the time we're young, we're shown the right way to do things, the normal path to follow, the model to copy, fit in, stay in line, do what works, be like them. But here's the truth that most people learn far too late. You don't rise by becoming more like everyone else. You rise by becoming more like yourself. Not the version you've edited to be accepted, but the real, raw, unfiltered version. That's where your power is. That's where your fortune begins. We've been conditioned to hide the very things that make us valuable. We're taught to tuck away our quirks, mute our opinions, and downplay our uniqueness. We're told to be professional, polished, and proper. And sure, there's value in growth and discipline, but not at the cost of identity. Because the moment you trade authenticity for approval, you start living someone else's life. You can't build something extraordinary on a foundation that isn't yours. See, average isn't just a lack of effort. It's often a lack of alignment. When your life, your work, and your actions are disconnected from who you really are, everything starts to feel off. You can succeed on paper and still feel like you're failing at life. That's what happens when identity is ignored. But when you own your identity, truly own it, everything changes. You stop performing, you start expressing. You stop reacting to what people think. You start responding to what you know. That's the shift. That's when you start living on your own terms. You don't need to be like anyone else. You weren't born to compete with the crowd. You were born to contribute something only you can give. And if that sounds dramatic, it's not. It's just the truth most people are afraid to say out loud, that you were designed with a blueprint no one else had. Owning your identity isn't about being loud, it's about being real. It's about getting to the place where you're not performing for applause, you're standing in purpose. Because fortune doesn't follow the best impersonator. It follows the most courageous original. And courage, let's be honest, isn't always comfortable. Being yourself fully means some people will misunderstand you. Some will question you. Some will walk away, but let them. Because the people who are meant to walk with you, build with you, invest in you, they can't find you if you're hiding behind a mask. The moment you show up as you are is the moment your people start showing up too. The world doesn't need another version of success that looks good on social media but feels empty in real life. It needs people who are grounded in who they are, who show up messy, honest, and fully alive. Because that's contagious, that's magnetic. That's the kind of presence that opens doors no resume ever could. Identity is leverage. When you know who you are, you stop wasting time trying to prove yourself. You start offering yourself. You bring ideas to the table that others overlook. You notice things others miss. You connect dots others don't even see. And that's where your value multiplies. And here's something most people don't realize. Your identity isn't just who you are today. It's who you're becoming. It's the unshakable core that grows, adapts, and evolves, but never changes its essence. That essence is what you need to protect at all costs. You don't find your identity in titles, income, or popularity. You find it in your values, your convictions, the things you're willing to stand for, even when it costs you something. That's your anchor, that's your compass. And when you stay rooted there, fortune isn't a matter of luck. It becomes a matter of alignment. So the real work, It's not about getting louder, it's about getting clearer. Not about trying harder to be seen, but being brave enough to be known. To stop editing your truth to make it more palatable, to stop shrinking so others can feel comfortable. Because the right people won't just tolerate your truth, they'll need it. When you operate from identity, you start showing up different. You work differently, you build differently, you stop asking what's the safest option and start asking what's the truest. And in that shift, everything begins to open up. That's when ideas start flowing. That's when creativity sparks. That's when connections deepen. Because people don't connect to perfection. They connect to presence. To the kind of energy that only shows up when someone is being fully themselves. There's a quiet confidence that comes with identity. Not arrogance, not ego, but peace. The kind that says, I know who I am. I know what I bring, and I don't need to chase because what's meant for me, that kind of clarity, it's rare, but it's powerful. It's the kind of clarity that cuts through noise. It draws attention without demanding it, and most of all, it creates trust, because people trust those who are grounded in themselves. So if you want to rise above average, stop reaching outward first. Reach inward. Ask yourself, who am I really when no one's watching? What do I value? Not because I was told to, but because I feel it in my bone. What makes me come alive? What feels like truth when I speak it? You don't need to fix yourself. You need to find yourself and then live from that place unapologetically, consistently, and with love. Because that's where your fortune begins. Not just in money, but in meaning, in influence, in impact, and yes, often in income too, because value flows toward clarity. And there's nothing more valuable than a person who knows who they are and walks in it fully. You don't need more permission. You need more truth. So show up. Not as the version the world expects, but as the version the world needs. The real one, the full one, the you only you can be. We all want to grow. We want to achieve. We want to reach that next level, whether it's in our careers, our finances, our impact, or simply in the quality of our lives. But here's something few people will tell you. Growth is not a moment. It's not a leap. It's not a sudden transformation that happens when the stars align. Growth is built in the boring, unglamorous, invisible routines that no one claps for. It's easy to admire the results, the success, the recognition, the fortune. But most people never look closely enough to see what built it. They miss the early mornings, the late nights, the quiet sacrifices. They miss the rituals that felt small in the moment, but ended up shaping an entire life. So we live in a culture obsessed with outcomes. People want the highlight reel. They want the breakthrough, the glow up, the big win. But the people who actually get there consistently, sustainably, meaningfully, understand something simple. It's not what you do once that changes your life. It's what you do every day. That's the power of habits. We don't rise to the level of our goals. We fall to the level of our system. Fortune doesn't show up just because we hope for it, wish for it, or even pray for it. It shows up when we build the habits that are aligned with it. It's not magic, it's math. What you do repeatedly becomes who you are consistently. And who you are determines what you attract, what you build, and what you sustain. It's tempting to think you need a complete overhaul to go from average to extraordinary, but the truth is, you're probably only a few consistent behaviors away from changing everything. One new morning routine, one new mindset shift, one decision to do the hard thing not once, but again and again. And let me be clear, this isn't about hustle culture. It's not about grinding yourself into the ground or proving how much you can take. It's not about intensity. It's about consistency. Small aligned actions done relentlessly over time beat bursts of motivation every single day of the week. You don't need to sprint. You need to keep walking. Because fortune doesn't reward speed. It rewards momentum. And momentum is built through habits. The greatest performers in the world don't rise because they're constantly inspired. They rise because they've created systems that carry them even on the days when they feel like quitting. They've built habits that don't rely on motivation. They don't have to think about whether or not to show up. They've already decided. And that's the key. You don't wait to feel ready. You build habits that make you ready. Because the person you become in the process of doing hard things daily is far more valuable than any outcome you're chasing. You can't fake discipline. You can't download consistency. You have to earn it. One decision at a time, one day at a time. That's the quiet work, the foundational work. And yes, the boring work. But here's the paradox. The boring work becomes beautiful when it's tied to something meaningful. When you know why you're doing it, even the most ordinary routine takes on extraordinary power. Making that phone call, writing that page, practicing that skill, saving that money. It all becomes sacred when you know it's building the life you believe in. So if you're serious about going from average to fortune, ask yourself, what habits does the future version of me already have? What does that person do on a normal Tuesday? How do they speak? How do they plan? How do they show up when no one's watching? Then bring that into today. Because the future doesn't get created someday. It gets created in your next choice, in your next hour, in your next morning. You don't need to become someone new. You need to become someone true. The version of you that already exists beneath the noise, the distractions, the excuses. And that version of you is forged through repetition, through integrity, through showing up for yourself not once, not when it's convenient, but constantly. There's freedom in habits. That might sound strange, but it's true. Once something becomes part of who you are, you no longer have to wrestle with it. You don't waste energy negotiating with yourself. You just do the thing because that's who you are. And here's what's beautiful. You're always building habits, whether you realize it or not. Every choice you make is casting a vote for the type of person you're becoming. So the question isn't whether or not you have habits. It's whether or not your habits are working for you or against you. Average happens when we live by default. Fortune happens when we live by design. So take inventory, audit your days, look at your routines, not just the big ones, but the small, subtle ones, the way you start your morning, the way you respond to discomfort, the way you talk to yourself when no one's around. If those things aren't in alignment with the life you want, change them. Not all at once, not with guilt, but with intention, with kindness. With commitment. Because that's how real transformation happens. Quietly, slowly. You'll know you're on the right track when you no longer need to convince yourself to do it. You just do it. Because it's who you are now. That's when the magic happens. When the gap between your intentions and your actions disappears. When your habits carry you forward even on the hard days. When your daily life becomes the proof of the future you used to dream about. And suddenly, you're not chasing fortune anymore, you're living in alignment with it. That's how it starts. Not with a leak, not with a breakthrough, but with a habit. One you choose, one you repeat. One that builds you into the kind of person who no longer hopes for the life they want, but lives it. There's something fascinating about people who rise above the crowd, not because they were handed an opportunity, not because they were the smartest or the most talented, but because they believed something different, something deeper, something others couldn't quite see yet. Belief is a quiet force. It doesn't shout, it doesn't need to, but it changes everything. Most people are living inside a set of invisible limits they didn't even choose. Limits passed down by their environment, by what they've been told, by what they've seen repeated over and over. That's just how it is. People like us don't get to do that. Be realistic. Don't dream too big. These messages get buried so deep in the subconscious that eventually we stop questioning them. We just accept them. And when you accept limitations as truth, you start building your life around walls that were never meant to be there. Here's the catch. Belief works both ways. If you believe you're average, you'll behave like it. If you believe opportunities are scarce, you'll act from fear. If you believe you're not worthy of more, you'll unconsciously sabotage anything that looks like progress. That's how powerful belief is. It becomes a lens, and that lens shapes what you notice, what you pursue, and what you allow yourself to receive. But the moment you shift the belief, the reality starts to shift too. And no, that's not some fluffy motivational soundbite. That's how the mind works. Our thoughts shape our emotions shape our decisions shape our outcomes. So if you want to create a life that's different from the one you were handed, it starts with believing something different about what's possible for you. Here's the thing about belief. It's a choice. It's not something you wait to feel. It's something you decide. And then you reinforce it. Not with one big gesture, but with small daily acts of alignment. You wake up and live like what you believe is already true. You speak it, you embody it, you walk in it, even when the evidence hasn't caught up yet. That's what separates those who rise from those who repeat. It's not just talent, it's not just timing, it's belief, anchored in identity and acted out through consistency. And the hard part, believing before the results show up. Most people want proof first. They want to see it before they believe it. But every person who's ever built something extraordinary had to believe first. That's the price. That's the path. You don't build a fortune by waiting for signs. You build it by being the sign. You believe you're capable, even if no one's told you that you are. You believe there's room for you, even if the room looks full. You believe your voice matters, even if it's been ignored before. And when you do, you stop waiting to be chosen. You start choosing yourself. It's easy to say you believe when everything is working. It's another thing entirely to hold on to belief when nothing's going according to plan. But that's when it matters most. That's when belief becomes a decision, not a feeling. A discipline, not a mood. You can't lead yourself to more if you keep dragging around the weight of old doubts. You've got to interrupt the story that says, I can't, I've never, or what if I fail, and replace it with something stronger, something true. And let's be honest, this doesn't happen overnight. You've probably spent years reinforcing beliefs that didn't serve you. You're not going to flip that switch in one motivational moment, but you can start the process today. You can become someone who questions this story, who rewrites the narrative, who chooses belief, even in the silence. You become the kind of person who speaks to yourself with respect. You stop saying things like, I'm just not that kind of person, or that's just not me. And you start saying things like, I'm still learning, I'm growing, I'm getting stronger. That language matters. Because how you speak to yourself determines how you show up in the world. And if you keep showing up from a place of doubt, you'll keep shrinking your life to match your fear. But if you start showing up from a place of belief, even shaky, imperfect belief, you'll stretch your life to meet your potential. That stretch, that's where transformation lives. Look, every person you admire had a moment where belief was all they had. No guarantees, no backup plan. Just the sense of purpose and the conviction to follow it. They acted like it was possible before it made sense. They bet on themselves before anyone else did. That's not magic. That's belief in action. And you can do the same. You don't have to have it all figured out. You don't need to know every step. You just need to believe that you're capable of learning, growing, and showing up. You need to believe that where you are now doesn't define where you're allowed to go next. Because once you believe that, the way you speak changes, the way you make decisions changes, the way you handle failure changes. You stop seeing setbacks as proof you're not enough and start seeing them as part of the path. That's when momentum begins. Not when everything's perfect, but when your belief becomes bigger than your excuses. So here's the challenge. What would change if you believed really believed that fortune was possible for you, that your story isn't finished yet, that your best chapters haven't been written, that there's something inside you the world actually needs, would you show up the same way? Would you stay stuck in the same conversations, the same routines, the same fears? Or would you move with more courage, more clarity, more commitment? You get to decide. Belief isn't passive, it's active. You don't just hold it, you live it. You build with it. You choose it every day, especially on the days when it's hardest to choose. And if you keep showing up with belief as your foundation, fortune will have no choice but to follow. Because belief is the seed, fortune is the fruit, but first you plant. At some point in your journey, after the goals, the growth, the grit, and the grind, after the belief becomes real and the habits take root, you come face to face with the question that changes everything. Who is this all for? Because fortune, real fortune, was never meant to end with you. You can build success, you can accumulate wealth, you can rise through the ranks and gain respect. And if all that stops at your own doorstep, if the rewards of your journey don't echo beyond your own life, then something is missing. We were never meant to rise just for ourselves. We're built to lift, to give, to multiply what we've been given. And yet the world teaches us the opposite. It sells us on the myth that fortune is about arrival, that once you make it, the story ends. But in truth, that's where the real story begins. The people who truly go from average to fortune understand that the greatest measure of wealth isn't what you accumulate, it's what you contribute. Impact isn't a side effect, it's the point. When you operate from that perspective, everything changes. You start thinking differently. You stop chasing for the sake of proving, and you start building for the sake of serving. You stop asking, what can I get, and start asking, what can I give? You shift from ego to empathy, from scarcity to legacy, and that shift doesn't make you weaker. It makes you unshakable. Because here's what's powerful about a life built on contribution. It outlives you. It expands beyond your time, your presence, your personality. It creates a ripple, an echo of meaning that stretches further than you could ever reach alone. That's what fortune really is. Not just what you have, but what you lead. But we don't get there by accident. We get there by design. By waking up each day with the question, how can I make someone else's world better today? Not in grand, performative ways, but in quiet, intentional ones, the kind that no one sees, but everyone feels. You can start that ripple with your words. A conversation, a gesture, a reminder to someone that they matter. You can start it in your work. When you care just a little more, listen a little deeper, deliver a little better. You can start it in your leadership, your creativity, your presence. Every single action is a seed. And when you plant with intention, you grow impact without even realizing it. You see, people won't remember all your accomplishments. They won't remember your follower count, your income bracket, your resume. They'll remember how they felt around you. They'll remember what you made possible for them. That's the real scoreboard. The question becomes, what are you building that others can stand on? What are you giving that others can grow from? That's the work that lasts. That's the legacy that makes the climb worth it. And don't fall for the trap of thinking impact has to be big or public. Some of the greatest change makers in history never had their names on billboards. Their impact was measured in hearts, not headlines. Lives changed, not likes gained. Sometimes your legacy won't be something people talk about. It'll be something people live because of you. The confidence they now carry, the path they now walk, the belief they now hold. And that's enough. In fact, that's everything. But to make that kind of impact, you have to stay connected to why you do what you do. You can't fake contribution. People feel it. You have to care genuinely, deeply, consistently. And that requires humility. It requires a willingness to see beyond your own climb and realize that your success is most meaningful when it helps someone else rise too. Because the truth is, you'll get to a point where the trophies won't fulfill you anymore. The applause will fade. The novelty will wear off. And the only thing that will still move you, the only thing that will still matter, is whether or not your life helps someone else live better. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. And what's incredible is this: when you commit to making an impact, fortune doesn't disappear. It multiplies, not just in your bank account, but in joy, fulfillment, connection, meaning. The very things people spend their lives chasing often show up when they stop chasing and start serving. Contribution isn't just about charity or giving things away. It's about investing what you've earned, what you've learned, and who you've become into something bigger than you. It's about letting your story serve as a roadmap, letting your pain become someone else's encouragement, letting your progress become someone else's permission. That's what separates average from extraordinary. Not the rewards, but the responsibility. The understanding that you didn't get here just to enjoy it. You got here to extend it. And you don't have to be perfect to start. You don't need millions to make a difference. You just need to look around and say, who can I lift with what I already have? Because the moment you make that decision, you stop being just successful and you start becoming significant. That's the shift. From income to influence, from status to service, from self-centered to legacy-minded. And that shift, that's what creates a life that echoes. So as you rise, and you will, remember this: the highest level of success is the one that leaves room for others to rise with you. It's not about being the first to the top. It's about building a ladder behind you. Because in the end, the only fortune worth chasing is the one you can share. Not just wealth, but wisdom. And that's how you go from average to fortune. You lift others as you climb. You create something that lasts. And you leave a mark, not just on the world, but in the hearts of the people who were changed because you showed up.